This audio presentation of the Sun Papers, number 61, Loving God, is brought to you by Christ Consciousness Channel, copyright 2023, all rights reserved. Loving God. In the December paper, we tried to show what is real service, and while it brought light and help to many, we realized that much more needs to be said before the full significance of what was stated becomes clear. All who have accompanied us thus far should have reached the stage where they are concerned about one thing only, whether in all that they do, they are pleasing the loving one within, their Father in heaven. They should have learned that all else is of no consequence, for they now know that He has placed them just where they are today, in order that they may learn the lessons still needing to be learned, and gain the qualities of soul that will enable Him to express more fully His divine nature in and through them, and thus make their human selves into the perfect instruments He needs for His use. They should have truly learned by this time that He is all that they are, that it is His life, His intelligence, His power, and His nature that are expressing in them, and that are prevented from expressing fully only by the untrue beliefs of Him in them, and of their difference and separation from Him that they are carrying around in their consciousness. Try to see how true this is. Stay with it until it becomes clear, before going on with what follows. For we know there are some who still read with their minds only, and who do not take time and trouble to stay with these great truths and allow them to soak in until they become a part of the soul consciousness. All such, who realize that they fail to study these truths until they become wholly clear, we earnestly urge to go back again and again to those truths they have not yet mastered and to stay with them until the light comes and illumines their inner meaning, as it surely will come when they compel their minds to surrender to the Spirit of truth within, ever waiting to shine forth in a consciousness open to receive it. Before proceeding, there also needs to be made clear, once and for always for those who are accompanying us, that God, who is all in all, and who therefore is all that we are, is expressing Himself in us as His Holy Spirit, the Christ, a Son of God, who as our higher self is representing Him, and is actually God in us. Please note particularly the emphasis on in us. In other words, God, the Holy Spirit, divine love, Christ, a Son of God, and the higher self, are one, are God expressing seemingly different phases of Himself, but only to make the fullness and variety of His nature clear to the human mind, when He has prepared it so that it can truly know Him as He is. This He can do only by teaching it to love Him, by its first accepting all that He teaches in childlike faith and trust, and then by His proceeding to prove to the mind that all that it has thus accepted is true. Gradually then the mind learns to know that He is all in all, and most important, that He is all that it is, that God is the one and only consciousness, and that a human mind is but a center of that consciousness, and therefore it has access to and is always a part of that consciousness. When a mind has truly learned this, then the owner of that mind knows that he and the Father are one, and that all that the Father has is his also. Ponder on each phrase in each sentence of the above until its meaning stands out clearly in your consciousness, and perhaps it will prove to be just what you have been searching for as the truth needed to carry you on to the finding of the kingdom. For when the mind thus surrenders its sense of separation and sees clearly its oneness with the all-consciousness we call God, is it not actually entering and becoming a part of the kingdom? There are a few who write us that they seem unable fully to grasp all of the deep truths we have been giving out the past year, and they have grown a little discouraged. But to these dear ones we would say, above all things, do not allow for one moment such feeling of discouragement to enter the mind, for that is but the enemy trying to prevent your finding of the kingdom. For remember, those who are approaching it, and all who have accompanied us cannot help but be very close, will have to meet every test that the enemy, the adversary or tester, can bring, to prove they are worthy, and that self and all its negative qualities have been mastered, and only the desire to serve our loving Father remains, that they may become one with all their brothers in Christ in His service. It is but natural that all of these great truths are not clearly comprehended at once. It should, however, inspire you with a determination to stay with and meditate upon them until you get their full meaning as intended. Now, we will return to what is true service. In the December paper, we tried to show how we work in the kingdom, how God's love is the actual life and power of everyone in the kingdom, that there we live only to serve, that self no longer exists, and we have no desires or needs other than that every center of the one consciousness, those of our brothers not yet in the fullness of the light we are in, may be brought into the complete knowing of who they are and of what they are a part of a great perfect whole, which we know as God. But we come only into that knowing of God through our awareness of His wondrous love that begins to show itself to us when we finally turn to Him and prove that we are no longer depending on men, ourselves, and outer things for our needs and happiness, but are looking to Him only as our guide, teacher, support, supply, and sufficiency in all things. When we have gradually learned to know and feel that love, to feel it as an actual presence, and know only love, then something in us capitulates and seemingly a veil or cloud lifts, and the light of the Father's love within begins to pour through, brilliantly illumining heart, mind, and body, and the sense of self just naturally disappears, leaving only that great love and the yearning to serve, which possesses us ever afterward. Those of you who are possessed by that love and yearning understand, and know already what we are going to say. You know that it is no longer a question of studying and getting more knowledge for self, but of putting the knowledge already possessed, especially the great truths learned in the last 5 years, to use in the Father's service. The Way Out course has been prepared as the natural outgrowth of a vital need and as a natural fulfillment of the purpose of the impersonal work. In calling out the awakened ones and leading them to the kingdom, and thus preparing them for service, it was of course planned that the way out and the opportunity for service, when enough were ready, would likewise be provided them. It has been proved by many hundreds of testimonials that in the text of the Way Out is contained just the truths needed by the vast majority of seekers today, those who have been brought by the Father within each one to where they are ready to be awakened and shown the way out of the darkness of self, into the light of freedom from lack, limitation, sickness, inharmony, and unhappiness, that freedom which you have found in your love and trust in God. Therefore, dear ones, you who for many months have been patiently preparing your human instruments, teaching them the truths given them, disciplining and training them to endure and remain steadfast in a perfect faith and trust in our loving Father, while undergoing the many trials and tests through which they have been put, have now before you the next step in this impersonal work of the Master with which you have aligned yourself, the helping to lead others into the light you have found, with the aid of the definite instructions provided in the Way Out course. We therefore earnestly hope that each and every one of you will feel led to form one or more groups for its study in your community. Therein is a simple and true way provided to serve most effectively. All it needs is a sincere desire to be of service through such means, and you will be shown very clearly the way. This is the Master's work, a very definite department of the work of the great Christ Brotherhood, and every possible assistance will be given you by them in spirit, as well as by us here in the outer. The Master is calling for workers, but more especially for trained workers, such as those who have been prepared through a faithful study and practice of these teachings during the past 5 years. Do you not now know who you are, why you are in this work, and that you are a real part of the great Brotherhood, one with them in their life and purpose? We wish to talk a little more about the wonderful statement in the December paper regarding that mysterious, invisible medium of exchange in use in the kingdom, and which takes the place of money as used on earth. We will repeat what is such medium as therein stated. It is the power and the practice of universal, impersonal, loving service, in immediate response to an expressed or unexpressed need. We wonder how many caught the true vision of these marvelous words, so much so that they see that what they state is so universally true that it applies not only to the kingdom, but to the earth as well. You may well ask, if one would practice such service here on earth, would it bring returns in exact ratio to the service rendered? No, we do not mean just that. But we do say that such service practiced exactly as stated, and as practiced in the kingdom, will provide for anyone so practicing it every desired and needed thing. This because it is an exact law, the law of as ye give, so shall ye receive. But can you not see that anyone who does so practice it is already in the kingdom, although his body may be still on earth? Such service cannot be rendered by one who has not found the kingdom, and who through the love and yearning mentioned is not a part of the great love, which is the life and the power of the kingdom. Think on this until you see how true it must be. Beloved, we are longing to see every one of you a conscious part of that great love, so conscious a part that it and its leadings are all of your life, and it is pouring all the great riches of its power through you for the healing, quickening, and blessing of all you contact. Can you not see that by yielding everything to that love, your life becomes one with that of the Christ Brotherhood? The following experiences are from a letter from a very dear soul whom you will all love. She has followed with us every step of the way and will receive this paper and be surprised that we print it. But she is one that understands all that we write, despite our language not being her native language. We have given it just as written with but few editorial corrections, preserving her form of expression as much as possible, so you can get her loving vibrations and all the beauty of her thought. Try to realize as you read that when she speaks of going in and being in Christ and God, she literally sees herself entering their bodies, knowing, however, that she is entering their consciousness, in which she abides and from which she looks out and acts, as she states. Therefore, see if you can accompany her in consciousness and can realize with her all the glories she describes and unquestionably experiences. Stay with each incident until you get its beautiful inner meaning. Also realize that she is endeavoring to describe spiritual realities in a language unfamiliar to her and which contains no words suited to the wonderful things she experienced. You cannot fail to see that she lives in the consciousness she describes, although she may be going about her daily avocation in the outer world. One beloved of God. My dear friend, I thank you so much for that lovely letter I got from you some time ago. All your letters are like some wonderful gems to me, and I feel your blessing so strong, and the blessing of God so wonderful, and I do love to read them over and over again. Yes, I have so many glorious visions, and I am so happy and thankful I can tell them to you, and that you understand so well. But I will say that words cannot tell the glory of the kingdom. The last seeing I told you about, I think it was of the divine union. And after that, I had many dreams and visions where I was with God. In one dream, someone told me, "You have all the intuition you need." And that is true. I have experiences, not one but many. The most remarkable one was as follows. My husband was in one room with some friends, and I did not know what they were talking about. I was in the other end of the house with some women friends. My husband came to ask me the name of a certain man, but before he asked, I seemed to know and spoke his name, although it was the name of a man who had been dead for 20 years, and I had heard it only a few times. When I spoke the name, no one said a word, but I knew everyone felt something unusual, for they all seemed to know about this man, although the women had not been discussing him. And once God told me, "All power is given unto you, my child." And I said, "Oh God, you use this power for me. I do not know how to use it right." He was looking at me so wonderfully, his eyes so full of love. And another time I was with God and I felt so empty. It was a queer feeling. So I asked God, "Why am I so empty as this?" And God answered, "So I can fill thee with my fullness." Is not God wonderfully good to me? And then I meditated on God's fullness. After that, God called me by name. For 3 days, he called me Hannah. I really did not pay much attention to that, but suddenly it came to me, God has not called me child for many days. And at once I went to him and said, "God, have I done anything wrong? You have not said my child to me for many days." And God said, "I have called you by name." I felt something wonderful was come to me, but I also knew that there was something more that belonged with that name. So I meditated on, "I have called you by name," for 3 days, and then all at once it came to me, I now belong to him as a beloved son. Can you feel the happiness that filled my being? After that, I have been asking, "What can I do for you, O my God? What can I do for you? I will gladly do whatever you want of me." Then I was led to paper say to Hannah, "Be still, and know I am God." And then God gave me both his hands, and we were one. After that it came to me, I, God, alone am. So one day when I was thus alone with God, there came a man dressed like a shepherd toward us. He had an iron staff in his hand. He spoke to God, but I could not hear what was said. God then took both my arms and held them fast behind me. I know now this was to make me be still. And the shepherd with the iron staff burned a big cross on my bosom. I was really surprised then, thinking how unusual it was to carry a cross on the body, but I love my cross now. In the night, I went down on my knees and prayed the Lord's Prayer for the first time perfectly correct in the English language. When I opened my eyes, Jesus was on my cross, and the cross with Jesus on was lifted out and up before me. Jesus is always alive when I see him on the cross. He stretched his arms toward me, and I was lifted up to him on the cross. And these words came to me, I, if I be lifted up, will draw all men unto me. And then, and God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him shall not perish, but shall have everlasting life. I had a wonderful time meditating on these two verses, and after I was lifted up, we turned and went in through the cross, from where there appeared a beautiful shining way toward a glorious sun. Jesus led me on this way, one of his arms around me, so he had both my hands in his hands. We had a wonderful time on this way, and I surely was very happy with him and to be led by him. After that, when I went into my silence, I often said, "Oh, Jesus, come and take both my hands in yours." It was so wonderful. And once I wrote my name, Hannah, on his chest. But he just looked down to me so full of love in his face. It made me very happy. A few days later, he wrote his name in my right hand. I knew then my hand was blessed. It was very wonderful to be led by Jesus, and a great joy to me to be with him on this our way. For I love him so. And one day we came to the sun. There Jesus opened up his body in the front, and I walked in. I had been walking in through his back previous to this. When I came in, there was a room and in it a table with a big book on it, and a candelabra with 7 candles on it. I lighted 6 of the candles and seated myself in a big chair so I could study that book. I was so determined to know what was in it that I did not intend to go away before I had read it through. So one Sunday, while listening to a sermon over the radio, it came to me I had not the reverence I should have for my beloved Jesus. And at once I rose up from the chair where I was still sitting before the book, and went down on my knees in prayer. And then there came a big angel, slowly walking into the room. He was much larger than I was, and after him came Jesus, in a new white robe, so pure a white I had never seen before. It came to me, Jesus is glorified. He lighted the 7th candle, and seated himself in that chair I had occupied. I was still on my knees at the foot of the chair, and when Jesus sat down, his garment came all over me. I was there on my knees, with his feet inside his garment, and there I was for many days, for I had much to learn. Or maybe my beloved master was giving me some test. Oh, I was so happy. Then once more I was with God, and the same shepherd came toward me. And I thought, oh, he will take away my cross, that cross I have on my bosom. I throw myself so close to God as I could, with my arms around his neck, and prayed, oh God, let not anyone take my cross away from me. I love it so much. And I hide my cross in his body. When I thus stood, my back was bare, and the shepherd burned a cross on my back, one now on my bosom, and one on my back. I love those crosses. For me, they stand for victory. Now I stand between these crosses, and it seems to me there are 2 ways to walk, one outward toward the sun and its light, the other inward, within my body, where it is dark, but as a wonderful night with thousands of stars shining. I seem to be walking on a way of stars, the Milky Way, when the devil appeared before me, but I was not afraid. I went straight to him and gave him a good trouncing. So now I am through with him for good, and I haven't seen him anymore. There was a real big lesson in this for me, but I know I am victorious. And then I was back with my beloved Jesus, with his feet, and then a door opened up in his leg. I went through the door, and there was a stairway up which I walked and stopped before every holy place I came to on the way to his heart, which was big and open. At the door of his heart Jesus himself was standing, waiting to welcome me. Now I am in the heart of Jesus. But there too it is dark, so dark not a star can I see, but angels are with me, and a very old man whom I thought was Moses. He took away all my clothes, so that I am all naked. It does not seem to make any difference that I am naked, for the angels are all around me. And then suddenly I find myself out in the darkness over a stormy sea. Farther and farther I fly, and oh, it is so dark, and the sea so rough and the waves so very high. But I can see the dawn ahead, just like a silvery sky and very beautiful. But I am so tired. When shall I come to shore? Farther and farther I fly. I cannot see any shore, and I can see so far ahead, I wonder can I make it. But oh, look up, look up. Is it Jesus or God? He has the face of Jesus, but his body is more like God's. He is seated also on God's throne. It must be both in one. The sea is not so rough anymore. God or Jesus is not so far above. So I fly swiftly upward and ask, when do I come to the shore? I am the shore, for you. It was God that spoke. And now I saw Jesus was God. And then I found myself resting so lovingly in God's lap, resting on his breast. Oh, here it is so peaceful, so still, so wonderful. I have been resting here for a couple of weeks now, and I am with many people in white robes. They are all friendly and loving, but I miss Jesus. And then once when I was all alone, I saw Jesus come from high above out of a great light down to me. Do you remember that first vision I wrote you about, when Jesus was dead, and I breathed my breath into him, so he could live? And when I had given him my life, he opened up my body from the back, and I came out a new, shining being. That vision came back to me now, when I saw Jesus come from high above. But this time it was Jesus who breathed his life into me, and when he had given me all of his breath, his body opened up like a shell, and out of his body came a wondrous light, which now goes before me wherever I am. This is my last vision, and oh, so thankful I am to God for his grace toward me. He has been so good, and I can truly say has given me wonderful power. I have to be so careful what I think or say, for it all seems to outmanifest. Detachment. Each time I receive and read the papers and the inner life, I feel that I have been near or with the Sun Center, for the articles all seem familiar, and mostly as my thoughts and meditations have been the past month. Every little thing in the outer life has its inner meaning, and as I work through the days or ponder at night, I'm always talking to this little self of Earth. Often at night I am one with it, and ask it what it would do under certain conditions, and I judge its real answers fearlessly and truly. This little self of 5 senses can know so little above what the animal soul knows. All else have I taught it, and it does nothing that I have not trained and enabled it to do. It has learned to accept anything that happens as coming from me. I find no more any rebellion, only silence, calmness, and coldness. There is much peace in this. Speaking as Helen, I have no desire to speak, or write, or ask questions, or to expect any answer except from within. This summer has been very hard. I have willingly gone through much physical suffering. I feel no emotion or interest, only a knowing that God is in charge. I have much given me. Over and over is it told me, and from God within, of his power, wisdom, and love, of vibrations, of life, in the heart of the acorn, as well as in me, of spirit, the life of all things. I ponder on our Father, Mother God, and our universe, and other gods, and other universes. If I never again opened my eyes to earthly vision, I could feel no more calmly detached than I do now. I can think trees, and I see them. I can make myself scenery, or I can view scenery, often, that is not of earth.